Hello, everybody. Welcome back to It's Called Football as we bring you all the highlights of what took place in Matchday 17 of the Premier League over this past weekend. Apologies that this video is out a day late as the games did finish by Sunday. But in truth, I was trying to just figure out uh, how to talk about everything that happened, namely one big incident that took place over this weekend, which I think we're going to rightfully devote the majority of the time to over this video. Before we talk about that, let's quickly go through the games that actually took place over this weekend. Friday saw Tottenham Hotspur travel to Nottingham Forest. Tottenham, of course, fresh off the back of beating Newcastle in matchday 16. And then Bournemouth versus Luton Town was the first of the Saturday games simultaneously being played at the same time as Chelsea versus Sheffield United, City against Crystal Palace, and Newcastle versus Fulham. Tottenham's game went pretty much according to what we even predicted, actually. A routine 2-0 win for Spurs in a game where they didn't really look under much trouble. There was a goal for Nottingham Forest disallowed for offside, but aside from that, Tottenham had the majority of control of this game, and they did have a player sent off for a stupid foul, but it didn't hinder their overall result at the end of this game. The Bournemouth Luton Town was at 1-1. Luton had taken an early lead in the third minute, and Bournemouth had equalized, and then came an incident which we will devote its own separate time to right now, um, which resulted in the match being called off in the second half at a certain point. And the Premier League has since said that the game will be replayed in full, so not just from the moment where it was paused and eventually abandoned, um, but it will be started from scratch again. Whether that's quite the fair decision or not, I don't know. But again, we'll talk about that when we're focusing specifically on this game. Chelsea had again, fairly routine and expected win over Sheffield United, who continued to languish at the bottom of the league. And Manchester City had a surprising result because at home, generally, if they go ahead, it's almost expected that they are going to win the game once they go ahead, especially the way they did in this game, and they went ahead by two. But Crystal Palace, credit to them, just continued to fight, and they do seem to be one of these bogey teams for Manchester City. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a bogey team is essentially a surprise team that a side struggles against on the regular. So, meaning it's not necessarily like a local rival. For example, Manchester City and Manchester United are local rivals. It's understandable that those two sides will always have unpredictable games against each other. But Crystal Palace is a bogey team for Man City because they regularly seem to be able to get a result against City when most other sides just get rolled over. And the fact that this hasn't just happened one season or two seasons, but it happens consistently, that Crystal Palace somehow, no matter what form the two teams are in, Crystal Palace somehow pick up results against Manchester City. And they did so again by the skin of their teeth, it must be said, but they did. And Newcastle took absolutely zero notice of Fulham scoring 16 goals in their last four games and destroyed them 3-0 in a fairly routine, comfortable win, which did see Newcastle pick up another potential couple of injuries, adding to that litany of players who are unavailable right now for them. And Fulham did have their striker, Raul Jimenez, sent off for a frankly crazy challenge. I don't know what he was thinking going for a chest high kung fu kick against a Newcastle player, but in my opinion, I saw it. It seemed like a fairly cut and dry red card. People on social media were saying the game has gone soft as a result. Personally, I don't agree with that at all. I think that was a dangerous challenge with how high the foot was. If he'd gone in with a little more force, that could easily have been something that broke a rib or two with the height at which it made contact with the Newcastle player. Saturday's late game saw Burnley host Everton in what's kind of dubbed in a friendly way the Sean Dyche Derby. Sean Dyche used to be the manager of Burnley for a long time. He's famous over there. He's revered over there. And eventually he moved on to pastures new and is currently at Everton, where he is fighting tooth and nail to save them from finishing in the bottom three, especially after that 10-point deduction. And so this was always going to be an interesting game. Sunday then saw three games take place at the same time: Arsenal versus Brighton, Brentford versus Aston Villa, and West Ham against Wolves before what was supposed to be the fixture of the weekend in Liverpool versus Manchester United. Um, Arsenal and Brighton have had a weird sort of set of games because Brighton have actually won their last three straight games when they've traveled to Arsenal. Brighton is a good side, don't get me wrong, but it's weird that they've seemed to have Arsenal's number at every turn when Arsenal are hosting the meeting between the two. So Arsenal were looking to change that, and a win obviously would potentially put them top of the league again if Liverpool didn't also win against Manchester United, which obviously that's another thing because Liverpool last season won 7-0 against Manchester United, and it was expected that they will cruise pretty comfortably again because Manchester United have been struggling. Liverpool have gone into this weekend sitting at the top of the league. There's a lot there in Liverpool's favour. Aston Villa, of course, were looking to banish some demons of their own. Their home record, as we know, has been impeccable with 15 home wins in a row in the league, but their away form has left quite a bit to be desired, and so this was going to be a difficult game nonetheless. In the end, Everton had a fairly routine win. They cruised to a 2-0 win away to Burnley, and Sean Dyche's new club has got one over on their old club. Uh, it was fairly over as a contest pretty early. You could tell how intensely Everton were playing the game, and it looked um, like it was going to be a game that they simply would end up breaking through by sheer force. Arsenal ended their little bit of a hoodoo over Brighton with about as dominant a performance as I've seen from Arsenal for a few weeks now. 2-0 doesn't really tell the story. It could have been four by halftime, just chances not being taken. But at the end of the day, it's hard to argue that the scoreline was merited. Brighton had some chances after going 1-0 down. They were unlucky not to put one away, but in truth, if they had put it away, Arsenal could only blame themselves, just like at Aston Villa the previous match day, where they had and fashioned most of the chances, they just didn't take them. No such mistakes this time, and Arsenal become the first side this season, and in truth, the first side in 32 league games to stop Brighton scoring. So no mean feat whatsoever, but Arsenal were dominating so much that it looked easy. Aston Villa managed to fix their away record a little bit, falling behind initially to Brentford and coming back to win the game 2-1 late in the match and sparking a little bit of fiery back and forth between the players of both sides as well as Aston Villa's team and Brentford fans. And to my surprise, really, West Ham kind of swatted Wolves aside with a 3-0 win that was rampant. Given how the two teams have been performing in recent weeks, I really thought Wolves would put up way more of a fight than they did. But ultimately, fair play West Ham. They deserved it. I saw the goals. I saw how they were playing. It looked like West Ham really just wanted it more. But then the surprise of the weekend, Manchester United went to Liverpool, and the way the game started out, it was very clear that they were setting up mainly to defend and just soak up pressure all game. Weirdly, it was Manchester United that actually had the best chances to score, with a couple of opportunities on a counter attack now and then. But eventually the game finished goalless, and Liverpool will definitely be the more disappointed by that. because this is the first time that they've failed to score this season, and uh, this is the first time they haven't won at home since the start of this campaign. So they have dropped points in a game that honestly everybody was expecting Liverpool to win without getting out of second gear. But Manchester United will be thrilled at escaping with a point from this game when no one really gave them any hope. So the results of this weekend, the main switch, of course, is at the top where Arsenal and Liverpool swap places again, with Liverpool only getting a point with their draw, and Arsenal managing to pick up all three in a game which has proven to be tricky for them in the past. That could be vital because Arsenal now hold a point advantage over Liverpool, who are tied at the moment on points with Aston Villa in third place. Then, because of Manchester City dropping points, there's a little bit of a gap between the top three and City. And City now obviously have some ground to make up and have to hope that the top three start dropping points. Tottenham, of course, keeping pace as well with their win, and then a few just quick swaps of places in the league table. Um, Below Tottenham. So Newcastle and Manchester United have swapped places. Newcastle now a point ahead. Manchester United finally with a draw this season for the first time after 17 games. Uh, but you know what? They will not complain at all because they went very clearly to try and get a draw out of the game, and they somehow managed it despite Liverpool racking up 34 shots over the course of the game. United somehow held firm, and fair play, they managed to get their result. West Ham's big win over Wolves, coupled with Brighton's defeat at the hands of Arsenal, means that those two sides swap places as well for now in the table. But as you can see, from sixth place to ninth place is all very tight, and it can change on a dime if one team has a good result and the other teams just have a week off where they flounder a little bit. And Chelsea's win over Sheffield United, although expected, has meant that they come back and peep into the top half again, back up into 10th place. But as you can see, 4 points gap between them and Brighton, which means after another week of games, the best they can do is still be in 10th at the moment. And obviously, it depends on whether Brighton can maintain that gap on Chelsea for longer in order to keep them below them. But Arsenal and Liverpool obviously is the big story here because those two teams play each other next, with Liverpool hosting again. And with Arsenal now holding a points advantage, it's possible that Arsenal play for a draw, which is realistically what most teams go and try to do at Liverpool because they're so difficult to play against at their home. But it's setting up for a really, really entertaining matchup. Uh, Next week, with even the possibility of Aston Villa being at the top of the table by the end of Matchday 18. We'll talk about those permutations when we get to the Matchday 18 preview video. Stay tuned for that later. In the bottom half, Fulham losing to Newcastle, coupled with Chelsea winning, means that Chelsea have leapfrogged them. Fulham dropped back into the bottom half, but just barely. They're a point below Chelsea, and Fulham should still feel full of hope. They've had a really good last few games, barring the one they've just played, and they're more than capable of pushing back into that top half if they can just iron out the kinks that went wrong at Newcastle. Brentford losing to Aston Villa means that they are now losing some momentum in this race to break into the top half. Although, as you can tell by points further down the table, they aren't really in any serious danger of dropping into those bottom three places at the moment at all. But still, Brentford, given how well they performed last season, will be a little disappointed with where they are at the moment, and they'll definitely want to fix up a little here. Wolves, of course, with their defeat, means that not only do they not move up or gain any more points, but also they uh, are a little weaker now in the goal difference column, given the manner of their defeat to West Ham. And Bournemouth, of course, with their game postponed and potentially rescheduled for sometime soon, they have not changed in terms of their points tally or their wins, draws, or losses. They They simply need to hope for the best when that game gets replayed. Crystal Palace, with their point, manages to keep them above Everton because Everton's fourth win in a row for them now, and fourth win without conceding a goal means that Everton are now breathing down the necks on, or you could really say the four teams above them, because Everton's goal difference is better than that of all four sides above them right now. They could quickly leapfrog their way into 12th, as high as 12th, by the end of next match day. So Crystal Palace's point again invaluable for them because it keeps them above Everton for the time being, at least. Nottingham Forest obviously losing again uh, means that they are dropping closer and closer to those bottom spots, which is roughly where they were last season as well. Um, but as you can see, they have a 5 point breathing space right now on Luton Town, who are next below them. So Forest do have a little bit of breathing space, but you could argue that's maybe just for one more match day, depending on how Luton perform later on. And then the bottom three unchanged in their points totals. Luton, obviously, with their game being abandoned and set to be played at a later time, and Burnley and Sheffield United succumbing to defeats yet again. 13 defeats out of 17 now for both of those sides, and that goal difference is starting to look poor again. Before we get to the big story from Bournemouth and Luton, a quick mention for a couple of the other moments of the match day. City and Palace, like we said, somehow, no matter how both these sides are doing, Palace seem to come with the fight against Manchester City, and they did so again. For a long time, it looked like City had the game wrapped up when they went 2-0 up fairly comfortably, but then they didn't kill off the game, and it's rare to see a side peg City back at their own home, but Palace did, and fair play. Jean-Philippe Mateta scored the first for Crystal Palace, and then a last-minute penalty managed to rescue a draw for the visitors on this day after a few poor weeks for Crystal Palace. So it is a welcome performance and result for them for sure. But Man City now with only one win in their last six matches, they have lost some ground in the title race, and they're not that many points behind, but given their usual standard, it is concerning. Now, obviously, City didn't have Erling Haaland available, nor Kevin De Bruyne, and they're two linchpins that really get their attack going. But given the plethora of talent that City have throughout their entire squad, there's really no excuse and no reason that they should be saying that, oh, we missed two players, which is why we can't get some kind of a better result, especially when you're already leading by two. Liverpool, unfortunately, were not able to take full advantage of Man City dropping points. Of course, Liverpool are still ahead of City for now, but of course, if they'd beaten Manchester United, they would have been ahead by much more than they are right now. And they will be kicking themselves because, like we said, they had 34 shots in their game against Manchester United. They weren't clinical. Darwin Nunez, that you can see there, to the left of the two red players. Um, had a bit of an off day. In fact, their entire forward line really had a little bit of an off day, which is very weird to see from them. And truth be told, if Manchester United had been a little more clinical, they actually might have won this game off one of those rare counterattacks they got in the match. A team that did take full advantage of both Liverpool and Man City slipping up was Arsenal, led by a very good performance yet again from their November Player of the Month, Kai Havertz, who looked like he was settling a little bit slowly into his new team after joining them in the summer, but now has 4 goals in his last 7 matches and looks like a player full of confidence, reborn again, and he's getting in good positions, taking on more players when he's got the ball, and seems more composed in general in his all-round play. I think he was performing fairly well even before, but I think with the goals starting to go in now for him, it does look like he's a more confident player, more assured player, and willing to take a few more risks to benefit the team. He scored the second goal for Arsenal in their 2-0 win against Brighton in the 87th minute, which was effectively the goal that killed off the match and made sure Brighton wouldn't have a way back into it. It's good to see that he's getting back into confidence because he definitely was looking shy of that self-worth and self-esteem in his first few games and towards the end of his spell at Chelsea before joining Arsenal. So good to see as a fan, obviously, of the club, but he is starting to become instrumental to Arsenal, and they will need him to be at his best if they're trying to make a push for this Premier League title. The other team from Liverpool, Everton, have arguably had the best run of results right now in the last few games than any other side in the league. Their last four games have seen away wins, 1-0 away to Nottingham Forest and 2-0 away now to Burnley, as well as home wins, 3-0 against Newcastle, 2-0 against Chelsea. So not poor opponents by any stretch for most of these four matches, but really incredible turnaround by them. That 10 points deduction has already been wiped out because Everton have picked up 12 points out of a possible 12 available. And huge credit has to go to them, their manager, everybody who's just stepped up and said, you know what, we're not taking this lying down. We are going to fight and show everyone that this punishment isn't going to send us to the next division below. And Ollie Watkins has yet again proven to be a savior for Aston Villa. He is the one who scored the late winning goal that turned around the comeback for Villa and got them all 3 points. Um, Away to Brentford, and he's looking more and more like the player that if Aston Villa are going to make a surprising push for the league title, then Watkins is going to be more than instrumental to their cause because he just keeps on popping up with goal after goal after goal, and he just knows how to be in the right place at the right time and be a clinical finisher, which is really all you want from your striker, isn't it? Despite all the rivalries and tribalism and the adrenaline that goes into football, there are times where we just remember, and we should remember, that it is just a game at the end of the day, and it should be treated as such. And there was no more stark reminder of that than during the game between Bournemouth and Luton Town, which had to be postponed because Luton captain Tom Lockyer, um, not after a collision or anything, simply collapsed on the field of play midway through the second half. Full credit to Bournemouth's player, um, Philip Billing, who spotted Lockyer drop down and simply collapse on the pitch and immediately got everybody to stop play and called the medical staff over from both clubs. They got to him within seconds, credit to them as well. And there were reports that he was kind of stable and showing signs of relative normalcy once they brought him into the tunnel, which wasn't that long after the medical staff got to him. Um, and thankfully he was okay. But Luton Town did confirm afterwards that their captain, Tom Lockyer, was responsive, taken to hospital, and thanking all the people that brought attention to him and got him the attention he needed. It was uh, it was confirmed as well that he suffered cardiac arrest on the pitch, and uh, and is at the moment we're still unsure exactly what has happened further to the situation. But like Luton posted on Twitter themselves, they can't provide a running commentary, and they probably shouldn't, out of respect to him and his family and his teammates. Obviously, this should be dealt in private, and but fans everywhere saw it happen, and it was quite lovely to see the whole football community unified in no longer caring about the result of a game at all, and just wanting to make sure that the player was okay. But it is a reminder that. Um, these people are not robots. They're not uh, just figures you see on a screen. They're human beings. This can happen to anybody. And the huge concern here for everyone watching, especially if you've followed football for a few months at least, is that this is the second time this has happened to Tom Lockyer in the last in 2023 alone. Actually, he collapsed in Luton Town's playoff final, the game which got them into the Premier League. He collapsed in that match as well, although that one had been potentially partly due to collision with another player. But this one just happened out of the blue. And so it was scary that it happened to the same player. But it was a reminder to me, at least, that, football is something to be enjoyed, to be cherished, but not to go over the top on ever as a fan or in any capacity. Because at the end of the day, moments like this kind of remind you uh, what's really important. Um, just to kind of go with our usual style, we will wrap up with seeing how we did in our predictions. Uh, Weirdly, this was one of our better weekends for predictions, really, because I got three of them, if I'm not mistaken, spot on in terms of result and scoreline. Nottingham Forest did fall to a 2-0 defeat at Spurs, like what I had predicted. Bournemouth and Luton obviously didn't take place, although I was wrong already by the time the game had been postponed. It was 1-1 at the time. Chelsea did beat Sheffield United by a margin of 2 goals, although perhaps I was overestimating both sides at being able to score that one extra. Definitely underestimated Palace's ability to continue being a bogey team for Man City, and fair play to Crystal Palace uh, for making it an even game at the end because it looked like they were about to be wiped off the pitch. I think if Fulham had had all 11 players on the pitch, they probably would have made it a closer game than it ended up being. But obviously, the one-man disadvantage meant that Newcastle were free to run riot at their own home ground, where they're always a bit more dominant anyway. Burnley and Everton, again, we predicted a 2-0 win. We got a 2-0 win for Everton. It seemed fairly obvious that Sean Dyche, who knows Burnley inside and out, and took some of their best players and now works with them at Everton. I think he was going to always get one over on his former side here. I did think Brighton would probably have more answers for Arsenal than they did, but Arsenal seemed to combat every single thing Brighton tried with relative ease. The first half alone saw Arsenal have 15 shots and Brighton with none. The first time that's happened under their current manager, Roberto De Zerbi. Brentford and Aston Villa was the third one that we got spot on. A 2-1 win for Aston Villa. We did think it would be a close match. I did think both sides would score, which is what ended up happening. I personally had thought that it would be Villa scoring two and Brentford just getting one back late on and not being able to equalize. But hey, we don't usually predict exactly what order the goals will go in, so we'll take that one. Again, like I said, Wolves, I was a little surprised and a little disappointed by, but I was impressed with West Ham for how they approached the game, and they deserved their win. Completely dominant, the opposite of what I predicted. And Liverpool, I wasn't really expecting to be so wasteful in front of goal against Manchester United, but United did set up with a decent shape defensively, seemingly more organization than they usually do. And yeah, 0-0 ultimately is a big result for Manchester United, given where the two teams are currently, how they're performing, where they are in the table. United will take that all day long. So we will leave you here for today. We'll be back in a couple of days with our Matchday 18 preview because during the Christmas period, the games are played thick and fast, but they also try to make sure that the players avoid playing on Christmas. So Matchday 18's first game actually takes place on Thursday this time, and we will make sure that we have the preview video out before that so that you know exactly what to look for going into that set of games. But for now, our thoughts remain with Tom Lockyer and all of Luton Town, and we hope that he makes a full recovery as soon as possible. And if he's able to, hopefully he can get back on the pitch and keep playing regularly for the team that he captains, who are probably the best story in the Premier League this season in terms of how they're there and how they got there. But take care, everybody out there. Stay safe, and remember, it's called football.